Could I just possibly get a show of hands of people that's involved in service work here in your community? Nice. That's awesome. All right. Now take a couple seconds, and I want you to think about one word that you could use to define how that service in this community makes you feel. Just take a few seconds and just think about it. The internal, what you get out of that service work. You guys coming up with some things? Yeah? I would like for you to shout those out to me, if you don't mind. Hi. Hi? Huh? Fulfilled? Happy? Useful? Useful. Yes. Joy? Satisfied? That's awesome. Those are all perfect examples of the point that I'm going to attempt to drive home. I grew up in a small town, Gallipolis, Ohio, and I remember, I would go to school, and in school, kids had the cool clothes and fit in and all these things, and I didn't quite fit there. I always felt like I was a little bit different. I always wanted to fit in. I always wanted some sort of attention. And I tell people, before drugs and alcohol came into my life, I had a problem prior to it. I had a very low self-esteem. I felt like everybody around me was better than me. In school, I remember I started gaining attention in a very negative way. I started learning these negative behaviors like to lie to avoid consequences, to get my butt whooped or detention. That way I could go with my friends to recess. But I really struggled. I really struggled with actually feeling like I was a part of. I remember as time progressed, drugs and alcohol became a part of my life. And I remember the peace and ease at first that come along with that, because it gave me that false sense of pride. It gave me the opportunity to feel like I was a part of something. In retrospect, then, that low self-esteem, drugs had became a solution to my problem, you know? I remember it brought camaraderie and joyousness and all these things for a short amount of time. And I remember showing up at school one day, and I just didn't feel good. I felt sick. Something wasn't right. And I had another friend of mine. He stopped me, and he was like, "Man, are you sure you're okay?" And I was like, "No, I feel like I got the flu or something." And he was like, "Here, take this. This might take the edge off." And I did, and I instantly felt better. And I was like, "Well, what's going on?" Well, then I realized I did have a problem. What had become my solution now had become my problem, because now I was dependent upon something to get up in the mornings and get through the day. So, as we all know, we graduate, and all those friends I thought I had kind of started to dissipate. But there's one thing that I still had, was the problem. I still had this problem inside of me that the only solution I could find to it was find ways and means to get more. Now I struggle with addiction. And it's funny, because even on the bad days and the good days, I still found an excuse as to why I should go find my next one. To fast forward a little bit, now this is a brief summary of me. I started going to any means necessary to get what I needed to feel better about myself. Like I said, I struggled with all these issues well before drugs became the problem, and now drugs are the problem, but I still have all these issues, all these underlying issues. So, as you know, when you start doing bad things and lying and cheating and stealing, consequences come along with that. And at first, the consequences was like a slap on the wrist. You know, they didn't really deflect me from continuing to attempt to try to find ways and means to get more. So I continued on this downward spiral, and it's kind of saddening because, you know, I got family members that look at me, especially my mother, and said, "Well, why'd you do this?" I said, "I'm sorry to tell you that I used your love for me against you to get what I wanted. Because that's all that mattered at the end of the day to me. Because, I mean, that's all there was. That's all I knew how to do. As time progresses, consequences progresses. One day, I decided it was a bright idea to get in my vehicle, drive to a gas station not far from here, and back my truck through it and attempt to steal the ATM. Not a good idea. Note to self. Write that down. Not a good idea. But ultimately, I decided that it was a good idea to try it at a couple other places too, and they weren't quite so successful as well. Finally, the consequences got great enough. I tell people about the disease of addiction, and I say that my allergic reaction to drugs and alcohol is I break out in handcuffs. And that's not, yeah, that's not an original to me. I've definitely heard that from someone else along the way. But that's the truth. Like every single time, eventually over a period of time, that's where it stops. Now granted, I had had brief periods of sobriety throughout these years, but this time I had created a whole whirlwind of mess for myself. And finally, the consequences had gotten great enough. Now in this process, a beautiful, innocent little baby girl was born, and she was my daughter. I would like to tell you at that time I was a father and I can remember everything, but I can't, because that's not the case. What I can tell you is I remember sitting in a jail cell. I remember sobering up and feeling nothing but guilt, shame, remorse for all of these things that I had done. And if you remember in the beginning, I already suffered with low self-esteem, so the pit and the bottom that pushed me to, honestly, looking back, is incomprehensible how I didn't make a decision to possibly take my life, because it was very painful. It was very painful. Now I'm facing charges in quite a few different places, and I come to the terms that, like, if I ever am given the opportunity to do something different, that I'm going to. Something totally different. Well, thankfully, thank God for the prosecutor's office, I had a second chance at freedom. I had an opportunity to have freedom again. I had accepted some plea bargains. I had actually been extradited to Gallipolis County, Ohio. And finally, it was time for me to get released. I remember I was so excited, so pumped. I'd been jailing for months, and it's like, oh, freedom, yay! And like I changed my clothes in booking, the same clothes had been sitting there for months, and they smelled like mothballs, maybe some other stuff. But I put those clothes on, and I walked out the door so excited, and instantly reality hit. There's nobody there. Not my mom, not my family, not anybody. Those friends that I thought I had while I was out there ripping and roaring, nobody. But see, I had this little picture of this little girl, and that's the only thing I carried out of that jail with me. And I just kept looking at that picture, and I'm thinking, well, she's in Athens County. That's where I'm going. So I started to walk that way. So here I am, walking down the side of the road, looking extremely rough. I could only imagine how crazy beard, hair's crazy, nasty clothes, but I'm sober. And I still have all those feelings, all that guilt and remorse, and the farther I walked, I feel like the farther that pain, the worse it got. A couple things happened along that way. It just continued. The pain continued to grow as I went. I ended up in a small little town, Cheshire, Ohio. I set my butt down on a church step, and it didn't look like nobody was at the church. And I remember, like, that was my breaking point, like, emotionally. You know, I was tearing up, and I couldn't control it, and my guts were just tearing apart inside of me because all I could keep thinking about is that little girl. So, as I'm sitting there, I hear something behind me. I didn't think nobody was there, so I turn around and I find there's a gentleman steps out of the church, and he asked me if I'm okay, which obviously I was not. But he walked over and he sat down and he started to talk to me. He started to listen to me. And a few seconds later, a couple other gentlemen come out, and they started doing the same. They actually wanted to hear what I had to say. Have they not checked like Athens County Most Wanted lately? See who I am? You should be running away. But no, they listened to me. One gentleman left and come back, and he was like, come on, we're going to give you a ride to Athens. And along that way, they continued to do exactly what they were doing on that church step. They were listening. I get to Athens County, and to fast forward even a little bit more, I end up in the Timothy House. You guys know, show of hands, Timothy House. It's the homeless shelter here in Athens County. It's a beautiful place, and I'm extremely grateful for that place today. So there's where I end up. There's actually a couple cool little stories in between there. I wish I had time to share, and I can't get to every detail. So yeah, I end up in the Timothy House in Athens County. Well, I'm going to fast forward to about 2 years later. I get in my vehicle, and I drive back to Cheshire, Ohio. I drive back to that same little church that I was at, a hot mess. And I find them same guys that listened to me, that reached a hand out to me. And I got to go to them and say, hey, here I am. Guess what? I got a job today. I got a home. I got my daughter. I have a life. It gives me chills still. Today, I try to give back to the community I had taken so much from. Today, I'm giving people exactly what you gave me. You gave me hope that day. And it was amazing to see the light come on. It was an awesome feeling just to see the smile on their faces. And I know just as well as for myself how spiritually uplifting that moment was on both sides. Because it's true. Like, that's where I'm at today. I am a father to that little girl today. I can be support. I can be those things for her. I do give back to this community, and being sober is a direct result of service work and the feelings that's attached to them. You know, our bodies are these beautiful things, and especially our brains. We produce dopamine and serotonin and all these endorphins that bring about the same euphoria as getting high. It's crazy. How many people in here can remember the way it felt when you seen your child take their first step, or seeing him be born, or let's say, for instance, your favorite college football team just won. Woo! Yeah! Like, you get that jolt of energy. What if I told you that same feeling you can get from being of service? What if has anybody in here just had a bad day? Come on, show of hands. Do you guys live in a world I don't know about? Huh? What if I told you on one of those bad days, go help someone, meet a stranger, shake a hand? Honestly, what do you got to lose? What if it could change that day? You know? Try building relationships, personal relationships with something other than a cell phone. Ooh, did I say that? What happened to shaking someone's hand and saying, how are you doing today? But actually meaning it, wanting to hear what their response is. So my ask of everybody in here, not today, but sometime in the near future, go out and help someone. It don't have to be materially, but I promise you the rewards, I know somebody in here knows exactly what I'm talking about. Honestly. Slowly but surely, if you get involved in that service, I got to see a prime example of it just a little bit ago at the dollar store right across the street. I walked over there to buy something. There was 3 people in front of me. The guy at the register, you could tell he didn't have barely anything to his name, and the lady in front of me reached up and paid for his stuff. And then when she approached the register, the lady at the register paid for her stuff. It was a chain reaction. And just watching it made me feel amazing, because that's what it's about. It don't have to be materially, just do it. Just try it. See what happens. What do you got to lose? So I'm asking you guys, if you get the chance, try it in hopes, slowly but surely, maybe we can help bring this community together, stronger, help each other. I want to thank all of you guys.